at the workshop. It's the Global Dialogue today. And I just want to say thank you to those of us who join in every single week and engaging with us. Today, we are going to be talking and having a conversation with two of our malamais at Osiri University. And we'll just be asking them a couple of questions, and I'm sure would all benefit from it. So the first person I would want to introduce is Ozioma Nwabo. So Ozioma Nwabo, he's got a specialty as a microbiologist. He's got a PhD. He's got a varied work experience. He's worked as a research assistant, teaching assistant, medical representative. At some point in his life, working life, he's also been a sales representative, a science teacher. Now he's got a range of experience. His research interest actually borders around antimicrobial drug resistance. That's the area that he focuses, so he's so passionate about it. He also looks into infectious disease prevention and control, and a lot about his study borders around food safety and microbiology. So in a nutshell, that's who Ozioma Nwabo is. He's won a lot of awards from various parastatals and also universities, and he's got lots of publication. I actually looked at his most recent publication, which is The Potential of Antimicrobial Tropical Gel with Synthesized Biogenic Silver. And it's a very long title, but again, very interesting read. Most of it I didn't understand, but for it to get published, and I'm sure he's doing something quite notable. So he's going to be our first, one of the first malamais that will be talking and having a conversation with today. Now, the second person is Taiwo, Mr. Taiwo Oludotun. I hope I pronounced that okay. So he is the second malamai that we'll be talking with today. He's got quite a lot in terms of what he's doing in the field of crop production. So he's published quite a lot, and he's looked into digital skills as part of his professional certification. He's also a corporate member in Retail Banking Academy London and Hilltop Leadership Institute. He's also got varied professional affiliation, River State University, of course, Osiri University, Retail Banking Academy, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. So his work experience ranges from working in River State University, where he's currently teaching, and he's also got a research farm, which we'll be asking him some questions about today just to gain some insight. So I'm sure we're super excited to hear them speak today. And I will just start, keep the ball rolling by asking them a couple of questions. So myself and Dr. Paul will be co-hosting today's event. And we just want to start by asking Mr. Nwabo, please tell us about the course that you have designed and what you considered whilst you designed that course.
Okay. Good evening from Thailand. It's actually night here. This is after 9. This is past 9 p.m.
Wow.
Yes. Okay, you asked what I considered. I must start by saying that designing a science-based course was not really easy for me, given the scope of what we are looking at Osiri University. So I was trying to see how I can bring in, factor in the Africanism into my science. So I now decided that, okay, since my area of study is microbiology and I'm interested in food safety, I'm interested in antimicrobial resistance, and currently I'm working on antimicrobial resistance, though I worked on food safety for PhD, but now I'm working on antimicrobial resistance. So I said, what do I do? So I decided to say, okay, let me look at antimicrobial resistance in the context of Africa. How does it affects Africa? And is there anything Africa can do? Because looking at it, if you read from articles and you look from published papers, it seems to me that maybe somehow we are still at the receiving end. So in designing my course, I try to look at the opportunities in Africa that can help us lead the way in drug development when it comes to antimicrobial drug development. So the aim of my course is just to make the student know that the dangers of antimicrobial resistance is real and it is severe. It's not something we should play with. And I also want them to know that antimicrobial drugs they're not rocket science. We can get them from our environment, which I also think that Africa is capable of leading a revolution in antimicrobial drug discovery because we still have much of nature with us. So I think we have nature untapped. So I looked at it and said, okay, then we can focus on this area and concentrate more on nature and how Africa can come in and lead in the crusade against antimicrobial resistance. That's exactly what I considered in designing my course.
Now, I just want to ask another question to you before I go on to Mr. Oludotun Taiwo. Considering the fact that the issues or the challenges that we're having around antimicrobial resistance, a lot of it comes from Africa. So I don't know how you have factored that in, the fact that, self-medication and people self-medicating and all that. So what can you say about that?
To answer your question, I think that the first solution to any problem is the knowledge that this is a problem. And that is the point where we are now. We're trying to make people know that this is actually a problem. And this is how we're contributing to this problem. So if we're able to know that we are contributing to this problem, then from there we can go ahead on what we can do. Maybe a change of attitude, because I even know amongst some of us, many of us who are educated, you just walk into a drugstore in Nigeria or anywhere in Africa and you ask for augmentin because you think you're having typhoid fever. And after the first 2 doses, you feel I'm strong now. You abandon the antibiotic. You don't care about it again. You just dump it there. And this over the years has culminated into the development of resistance. And now the first thing I think is to make people understand that we have a role in this problem and we can do something. We can actually come in and solve this problem. So in designing my course, I try to bring that in, that this is what we can do. This is how we can go about it. This is how we can solve this problem. So basically, I also want, if it's possible, I also want to expose the students into the various ways they should be able to assess these antimicrobial agents from nature, identify them, isolate them, and develop them into potential drugs, which I know we are capable of doing.
Thank you. Mr. Taiwo Oludotun, I don't know if you heard the question before I think you got disconnected. I actually asked, what course did you design? So tell us a little bit about the course you designed and the things that you considered whilst designing the course.
Okay, all right. Good day, everybody. I designed a course on crop production. All right, so what I had in mind, I expect my students at the end of the day to learn the basics of crop production, introduction to the basics of crop production, because agriculture is a very practical course. So while designing this and knowing the nature and the structure of our university, Osiri University, and the entire concept, it was designed in such a way that there will be an hands-on training. They could get their practical knowledge of what crop production is all about. So I have gone to design my module in such a way that it covers the entirety of crop production, starting, looking at the basic components of crop production, which includes the seed and the soil, and also the management of pests and diseases. At the end of the day, the post-harvest. So the post-harvest practices and processing. These are the very key areas they can lay their hands on. Then having the knowledge about this will help them to actually start on by themselves, start a kind of farm on their own, wherever their locality is. And also, this was designed with having at the back of our minds that we are in Africa, and the climatic condition, the weather, it's different from North Africa. The students will be from North Africa down to South Africa and the Sub-Saharan Africa and East Africa. So the assignments and the feedback we're going to get is going to be localized such a way that we won't have a general case study. It will be a localized case study where you carry out a research. The students will carry out the research by themselves in their locality, getting resources from existing farms and farmers in their locality. If we talk about how to test for seed viability, we'll teach about it, but you have to go back to your community, your locality, to understand how your farmers already, what they are currently doing to test for seed viability. I just use that for instance. So you have to go back. So each individual students will have to go back to their locality. Then they will bring the feedback. In that process, we both learn something new. The students will be able to understand how to carry out research by themselves. And at the end of the day, they'll gain more knowledge in terms of what the subject we're discussing. So my learning outcomes are listed thus. At the end of my course, my students should be able to test for seed viability. It's very essential because, okay, let me just list them before I go on to shed more light on the expand on the learning outcomes. All right, then secondly, my students should be able to test for soil fertility. These are the basic components, like I said, seed, soil, and then pest and disease control. They should have a knowledge of pests of individual crops, and then the diseases that affect them and how to control them to the ultimate goal of maximizing yield. That's actually what we intend to achieve. And then post-harvest practices, which was having harvested all the things, and you need to actually preserve them. So yeah, basically that's and then what we're going to focus on, the crop we're going to focus on are going to be like two main crops that kind of they're common in Africa. So we're going to choose maize and peas. So those are the crops.
Mr. Taiwo, I see you're so passionate about this. you're actually trying to begin now to give us the whole lecture. We just wanted a nutshell of it, actually.
Oh, sorry.
You're raring to go. You're raring to go. But you actually summed it up, and this speaks to how passionate we are as instructors at Osiri University, and I can actually see that you're demonstrating that right now. So basically, if you can summarize in a nutshell, the things, the main points that you considered whilst designing your course. Because, this is a global audience now. So we just want to kind of pass on that message and, get them to engage that way.
Okay.
Yes.
So my major consideration is to send across knowledge to, apparently I feel that my students don't have any knowledge about agriculture. And this, to pass across the knowledge to them with the ultimate goal, objective of actually spurring up or inspiring them to actually want to love agriculture, love to practice agriculture, crop production, precisely. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. So I'll pass the baton now to Dr. Paul.
Oh, you started running down the entire list of our questions there for a minute. But we can keep going with that. Could you just elaborate more on the practical knowledge that you want students to gain from your courses? This is for both of you.
I've already listed my outcomes. We're focusing on the basic components of crop production, which involves the seed, the soil, pest and disease control, and then the post-harvest practices. So while I focus on seed viability test, number one, is to ensure that before you can, you want to try and eliminate any form of gambling when it comes to planting. You want to be precise. We want to test the seeds ahead of time. We want to know, and it will show them the simple basic method of knowing whether determining or examining whether a seed is viable before you plant. Otherwise, it may be a waste of effort at the end of the day. So that, and there are processes. We'll start with definition, the importance of seed viability test, like I've explained, and then methods of testing, basic methods of testing where they can easily practice wherever they are. At the end of the day, they can use a simple method of using the roll paper test, or they use a chemical called triphenyl trimazole to test. So we can use the basic methods of normal tissue paper, or they use a chemical, because the chemical may not be accessible and may be expensive a little, depending on their locality. But we just use the basic methods of testing. I don't know how well you want me to talk about it, but let me just leave it that way.
No, that's good. That's good, and it's important that we talk about these things because, there's what our science needs to be able to reach the common person, right? The common man and woman, and be able to help them in what we're doing. That's why we learn what we learn, not just to reach the university people and the academicians, but the common man and woman. Good.
Yes, sir.
Ozioma, could you elaborate on the practicality of your course design, or what you want students to take from your class, the practical lessons that you want students to take from your class?
Thank you very much, Dr. Paul. When it comes to the practical knowledge of my course, the first thing I would like students to understand is first, like I said, the severity of the problem, and I want the students to be able to identify within their locality possible plants with antimicrobial importance. Especially, I want them to identify plants their forefathers, their ancestors used in the old, and for what kind of sickness they use them for. And if they use them for this kind of sickness, is there literature to back up such thing that this plant has this kind of effects? If they use them for malaria, for example, when you come to places like some part of Africa, from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana to Nigeria, we use something like Picralima nitida for malaria. I think I know the Igbo name, but I don't know the name in other parts of Africa. But I know the Igbo name. I will call it tos in Igbo, and we use it for malaria treatments, even among the old people. And now I would like the student to know, to search the literature and see, can this drug actually be used for malaria treatment? Does it have anything that is active against these parasites? Or were these people just gambling and drinking whatever they see? And when you look at literature, for example, you find out that Precalima nitida is actually rich in alkaloids. And for example, we have things like aquamagine from Precalima nitida, which have been proven to have good anti-malaria properties. So we want the students to identify these plants from their locality and do a kind of literature survey and see if there is a backing to our forefathers and our ancestors using these plants. I also want them to learn how antimicrobial, how we have played a role in the spread of antimicrobial resistance. I want them to know that, I want them to identify those things we have been doing in the past that might have aggravated the problem of antimicrobial resistance. And I also want them to appreciate that nature is rich in bioactive components, and that actually our food can be our medicine, not just for the sake of eating it, but our food can be our medicine. We can rely, we can eat well just to stay healthy, not just by taking the synthetic antimicrobial drugs every time, which actually the era of synthetic drugs is gradually phasing off, because there is now an uprising, and there's this uprising and distaste against anything that is synthetic. People don't want it again. People want to go back to nature. So we want them to understand that nature is rich in bioactive, and we can actually use nature as food and as medicine at the same time. We also want them to see, we will expose them to practical knowledge on how to go about, if possible, isolating these bioactive compounds. What are the techniques you can use in isolating them? What are the techniques you can use in identifying them? For example, talk to them about, even though we don't have the equipment, but share with them maybe videos on things that have to do with the chromatography, LCMS, MS, things like that, NMR. We can share these things with them, and they see the technologies behind the identification and isolation of these antimicrobial agents, and possibly also expose them on the basis of the testing for antimicrobial activity of plants. So these are the practical knowledge we would like the students to have at the end of the course.
That's very important what you guys are saying. And what I hear as well is you both have solution-driven research and solution-driven knowledge, and that's very, very important. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Well said. And again, this kind of brings me to the next question that I want to ask. You know, considering all the very interesting stuff that both Taiwo and you, Mr. Nwabo, has been putting forward, considering the mode of delivery for Osiri University and the courses that you have designed so far, what are the appropriate instructional tools or strategies that you have embedded in your course, or that you're thinking about embedding in your course if you haven't done that?
You know, actually, when I designed my initial course, I must say that with time, I began to see myself the weakness of the course that I designed. And that's also made me to know that there is room for development and improving on my course. Because like I rightly said, my course, since it's a practical course and we don't have the laboratories based on our mode of delivery, I think I have actually added so many reference material to my course, but at this point, I think there is need for me to include videos on the processes. Maybe if I want to teach them about NMR, I want to teach them about the process of isolation, they should be able to see the videos. If they cannot do it themselves, they should watch the videos and see that, okay, this is how this thing is done. This is how the plant is fractionated into various components. And this is how these components are identified. And this is how, based on CLSI method, we're able to test the antimicrobial. So, like I said, I have not yet included these videos, but I've provided for them literature material. But before I submit the final course, I hope to include these videos so that my students will be able to appreciate exactly what I'm trying to pass on to them. Not just read from the books, but appreciate that these things are actually done. Even if we cannot do it, it is done somewhere, and we can do it when we're able to do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So are you saying that with these videos now, the students would be able to go on to do these things by themselves, provided they want to?
Yes, they're not necessarily doing it by themselves, but doing it by themselves with minimal guidance. Maybe not just entirely themselves, but just requiring just little guidance, because they've seen the videos, they've read the articles, and all they need is just the hands-on practical, and they're able to do it.
Fantastic, thank you. Mr. Taiwo, the same question, please.
Yes. All right. So some of the highlighted courses, like for instance, seed viability. Most of there'll be a step-by-step practical procedure to achieving this on paper, and then there'll be diagrammatic. There'll be pictures that will show step by step. In addition to that, there are literatures. I mean, so that'll be attached to my course model, so that the students will have access to the materials. And then if there's need for it for videos, I could add videos as well. But like I said, at the end of the day, the assignments for the students would have to be identifying some farms and farmers in their locality. Okay? Then they will be able to watch what they've done. They will give feedback on that as part of the assignment. And through that, they can learn. They would be able to combine what they've learned in school online to the practical operations in their locality. So these are the things that are put in place to ensure that there's a learning process whereby they can have a practical knowledge of what they intend to do. All right. I hope I'm clear.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
Yes, very clear, crystal clear. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sure, looking forward, I mean, just listening to both of you, I just want to enroll on your courses straight up. So it's going to be very insightful. I mean, judging from what you both have put forward. So thank you so very much.
Thank you,
Dr. Paul.
Yes, for both of you, we can start with Ozioma first, if you please. What makes your courses a decolonized course?
Let me start by saying that the concept of science and medicine is not foreign to Africa. Our forefathers already were practicing medicine before these guys came and interrupted them in the name of colonialism. They were already practicing medicine. They were already in the business of taking care of themselves. Whenever they are sick, they know what to take and they get better. But with the advent of colonialism, everything seemed to change. Most of those ancient knowledges, it's actually very, very unfortunate that most of this knowledge are gradually dying off without being passed on to the next generation. Because most of the people, like in my hometown, I know of people who do this orthopedic work. They're just native orthopedic, they just fix your bone and you're good to go. But now their children cannot do it. Nobody can do it in the family again. So those skills are disappearing. So what I did was to center my course on Africa. I would have loved to look at malaria specifically because malaria seems to be an African disease, though it's spread across Africa and Asia. But because it's actually outside, a little bit outside my field, because I am actually a bacteriologist, so I just mentioned it in my course, but I didn't concentrate on it. So I tried to focus on Africa to identify those things that makes Africa to be at a higher risk of this antimicrobial resistance, and also identify what Africa can do for themselves in order to address the problem of antimicrobial resistance. Outside the issue of behavioral change, I also try to mention that, like I mentioned earlier, that we have all it takes. We have all it takes. I also try to encourage research into antimicrobial drug development in Africa. Because sometimes when I see some things happening in Africa, for example, when you come to Nigeria, for example, you see so many kind of, is it Genshin tea? People take all kind of, is it something Genshin tea? They take all kind of Genshin tea. They say it is this, it is that, it is this, it is that. But these things are from plants, gotten from Asia here, and China is making lots and lots of money importing these dried leaves to Africa for them to drink as tea. But within Africa, we have things that are more valuable than that, but we don't appreciate it. For example, if you go to Nigeria, we'll have this upcoming company they call Libracin. Libracin is an indigenous company that is now into the development of herbal concoctions and herbal tablets from plants within Africa. So what I did to decolonize my course was to concentrate more on the African problem and look at how Africa can solve this problem by themselves, Africans.
What you're saying is very critical, is getting back to the old ways, understanding the needs that are there, as well as combining with our new ideas and our new technologies and stuff like that. That's very critical what you were just saying. Very important. Good. Pastor to Alotun, excuse me, Tayo.
Yeah.
Tayo, excuse me.
Yeah. So to Africanize my course, crop production, it's our thing. Actually, agriculture is actually African. So establishing that basic truths, opens my course to the students. Then, while in the course of administering the course to my students, while carrying out researches, assignments basically, it's tailored towards Africa. That's why we are using African crops, basic African crops known to us. At the end of the day, it will also allow the students to be able to research on the crops that are prevalent in their locality. They'll be able to carry out soil fertility tests, seed viability tests by themselves in their locality, and also know the pests and diseases that are prevalent in their environment, so that they'll be able to prepare themselves before engaging in crop production. So whether you're in North Africa, whether you're in South Africa or West Africa or East Africa, you would be able to carry out your research by yourself in your locality, even though there'll be a general knowledge. But at the end of the day, you carry out assignments and projects that will be tailored to your locality. So that's how to Africanize my course.
Okay, so now following up from the questions, I see you made lots of reference to Africa, and that's drawing from what my colleague Paul has been asking. Now, I just want to ask a question, considering what you have both talked about. You, Taiwo, has looked at crop production, and then you, Mr. Nwabo, has also looked at antimicrobial resistance. Now, what are the key challenges that Africa faces right now as it has to do with antimicrobial resistance? And then for you, Mr. Taiwo, would be, what are the challenges that Africa faces as it has to do with crop production? So I know that you've touched on a few, but we need you to elaborate more on that.
All right, so we've all known that the perception of Africa in the world, in global scene, it's that, okay, there is hunger, there is deprivation and stuff, and it's just really, how do I describe it? Because we have a very vast land, vegetation, it's so broad, we have vast land area for cultivation of crops and even animal husbandry as well. But we really don't maximize what we have. Maybe because one of the challenges, I think, most likely is because of the capital to actually start up the cultivation of crops and agriculture generally, because it requires a vast land. There's a need for mechanization, and then government have not really been so keen. They are doing what they can, but to meet up with the expected output, even it requires a whole lot of funding, government funding, because as a subsistence farmer, there's a level where you can reach. You cannot, even while in Nigeria, we are producing rice in Nigeria. The kind of the tons of rice you can produce as an individual or a company may not be able to match over 200 million citizens consumption, of citizens in Nigeria, for instance. So production is there, and that's why I was actually included in my course. Post-harvest is very important. Post-harvest is one of the issues, one of the major issues we have in Africa, because at the time you have cultivated maize, you have harvested maize. How do you keep the maize from not getting rotten? At the same time, you keep it for consumption for the masses, and then keep the grains also as seed for the next planting season. So it's very, very essential for post-harvest practices to be taken very seriously in terms of harvesting, right from the harvesting, handling, storage, processing, packaging, transportation, even up to the point of marketing. There shouldn't be a loss. Even 1% or 0.5% loss. There shouldn't be any loss in the harvested produce at every point in time. That's how we can maximize. So this is one of the challenges we have is the intervention of government. They've not really been 100%, but there's been input from government actually. So that's one thing in terms of funding, and then even the post-harvest requires we need some storage facilities, not just for small sizes we have tons and tons of harvested produce. So it requires capital to actually get these storage facilities. So I can say that is one of the challenges we actually face. Let me just leave it that way for now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. When it comes to the challenges Africa face in terms of antimicrobial resistance, I think there are so many of them, and it ranges from government policies to individuals. When we look at, for example, other parts of the world, I think after the 2017 WHO Global Surveillance on Antimicrobial Resistance, they encouraged every continent and every country to have a coordinated surveillance for antimicrobial resistance. But see, today, in most African countries, we don't have any surveillance for antimicrobial resistance. There is no database, there is nothing, there's no culture collection center where we say, okay, these are resistance isolates from this part of Africa, these things we are getting from here in Africa. Secondly, we don't have we have very poor testing. Many of our hospitals don't even have the adequate testing kits to carry out this antimicrobial resistance test. We don't have the testing kits. And I also want to talk about, because when you talk about antimicrobial resistance, it doesn't boil down to medicine alone. Somehow it also goes down to food in the part of what Taiwo just said in crop production, because you find out that food preservation, most of the food preservatives are antimicrobial or antioxidants. Most food preservatives are either antimicrobial or antioxidants. And if you also read from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, they did tell us in 2018 that 1 in every 9 persons don't have enough food to eat. And also say that 1/3 of agricultural produce are lost to spoilage. And 5% of this loss is due to microbial spoilage of food. And unfortunately, antimicrobial resistance is also a problem because most food-grade antimicrobial are no longer active. So we have preservative failures. When you try to preserve your food, the antimicrobials are not working, these food spoilage organisms are still growing in the food, and the food is getting spoiled. So these are problems we have. But I think that also we have a very poor funding, research funding, when it comes to antimicrobial resistance. Like I did a meta-analysis lately on Web of Science, trying to see research articles on resistance, antimicrobial resistance. And when I collected the whole research articles, I tried to look at the funders And unfortunately, there's no funder from Africa. We didn't have any of the funders from Africa. Nobody's funding antimicrobial resistance research in Africa. And when you also look at the research output from Africa when it comes to antimicrobial resistance, it was about 2%, just 2% of the whole, judging from the literatures we have on Web of Science, just 2% belongs to Africa. So it tells us that we don't even realize that we have a problem, that there is a problem. It's like the hazards of fire and we are still sleeping and we don't know about it yet. So first of all is, because I also think the lack of appropriate, adequate knowledge is also a problem. We don't have the knowledge of it. So these are some of the challenges we have in Africa. So to address them too, we have to start from making people realize that there's a problem, creating this knowledge. There should be a knowledge to antimicrobial resistance, the dangers it poses to us. And then we can now look at how to encourage funding, because there are actually people who are ready to fund if they see people who are interested and know how to channel their money into such research. So I think it's our duty to also see how we can enhance this kind of research in Africa, because it's a very big challenge in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask one more question before we get to the Q&A. You can keep your answers short if you like. But what are the just taking consideration global warming and all the environmental fluxes that are taking place right now? We see the hurricanes and the fires in California, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things going on around the world. What are the implications of global warming on you guys' research?
As a crop production person, specialist, we actually rely more on the climate and then weather for maximum production of our maximum yield for our crops. So at a point in time, there was rain was really very low, which couldn't support agricultural produce. All right. So this year, I can tell you that. So that's how it affected yield at a point in time. But most importantly, there are dry season varieties and that's where research has come in. There are some dry season varieties of different crops that would enable farmers to survive. And that's how they all came as a result of researches. So in events where the rain was posing as a threat to yield, then farmers would definitely plant dry season varieties at that point in time. So that's how it's played out.
Okay, I think that the climatic change might also have played a very big role in the emergence of some new microorganisms we didn't know before. And some of them might also have developed some kind of mutation, which might result to antimicrobial resistance. And also, when it comes to our health, because whatever affects our health affects the microorganisms, in the sense that if our immune system is weak, then the microorganisms are able to invade us more. But if we have a strong immunity, then our system has a way of taking care of itself. But if the global warming, if the climatic problems have come to a point where it affects our health, then it's a problem. And two, like I said, emergence of new strains, new variants of microorganisms, we don't know, which we don't know where they're coming from recently. We just say there's an outbreak of this disease here, there's an outbreak there, there's a new one, there's a coming back of a disease that was last seen in 1920, coming back again. So these things, we might all trace this back to some of the climatic problems we are having now, and they are responsible for the emergence of these microorganisms. And if they are, then they are playing a major role in antimicrobial resistance. So that would be my answer to that question.
How do we then go about solving these challenges? You both highlighted challenges quite specific to your field. How do we solve these challenges, looking at it from a national or even a community strategic level? So if you can just tell us in a nutshell, what are the ways we can navigate or solve some of these challenges that you've highlighted?
Okay, so on my own part of my course in crop production, we also incorporated the assignment and feedback, whereby students would will learn how to write a note, official letter to their individual government in their locality. And this is going to help in the sense that they will learn how to engage government and research institutes in identifying, after they've identified the challenges in their field, whether, for instance, not being able to have access to storage facilities after that's for the post-harvest, for instance. You know, they will prefer solution as to what are the things we need. We need silos, we need storage cribs of this dimension. Sometimes they can write for pest and disease management or control. We can write to them that we need subsidized access to chemicals, even though we don't really want to push in for chemicals so much. But of course, for to the large extent, most farmers don't have access to, most of these chemicals in terms of the capacity to have funding, finance. I mean, to actually have enough funds to actually buy these chemicals. So the students will identify the specific issues, challenges in their locality, write to the government through the appropriate channel. So hereby, we're trying to take it from the grassroots. By the time they get to the position of authority or they get to some levels, they'll be able to communicate to the government in their national, in their nationalities, different localities. So they'll be able to communicate to them to identify the challenges and possible solutions, how the government can come in. So that's how I'm channeling in my course to make sure I groom the students to understand that they have the ability and it's their right to communicate this to their government in their various localities. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Taiwo. So what about you, Ozioma, please? Could you?
Okay, to handle these challenges, I think the first thing I intend that the students should know, we want to create adequate knowledge from the students down to the general public, where they understand that there is a problem. We also want the students to come to appreciate the fact that they can be an agent of change. So we want to preach behavioral change towards the handling of antibiotics. At least from them, they take it home to their parents that, hey, if you have an antibiotic, you have to finish it. You don't just take one tablet and abandon it. That's causing a problem for us. So we want to do that. We also want a situation where the students will also be able to realize that they themselves can start up something, no matter how small, if they know that there is a way of getting these things from plants and other places. Actually, there are so many research ongoing. For example, I just read about some antimicrobial agent called natamycin that was just gotten from somewhere in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. So they gave it the name natamycin, but it was from KwaZulu-Natal. And now they use it, it's now approved by FDA as a food preservative, for antimicrobial food preservative. So we intend to make the student understand that the waste they always throw away in the environment can be the next solution to the problem. And so they should be able to look beyond what they see and try to probe and know what is this. Like currently too, I'm involved in a research that involves some waste products from plants used in paper production here in Asia. But now the leaves of these plants, we now find has antimicrobial effects. And there's so much research going on trying to isolate compounds from them that we can use as antimicrobial drugs, develop into antimicrobial drugs. So we want to encourage the students to know that not just plants, so many things around them, from the mushroom, from the grass to the plants, there are so many things they can do. And these things can be used for medicinal purpose. So first of all, we create the knowledge. After creating the knowledge, we want the students to take this knowledge home. They will preach behavioral change.
That was amazing.
Yeah, we must change our behavior to the handle of antimicrobial drugs. And then from there, we also have to encourage and see how we can preach investment into antimicrobial research. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, Ozioma. That was really great. We have one question and we have 3 minutes. This is for Taiwo. How can we solve the problems devoid of reliance on government? If you can give a brief answer, that will be great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, there are some individuals, organizations that, as part of their corporate responsibility or social responsibility, they've taken it upon themselves to, invest in agriculture aside government, because we know government can't do everything. We cannot leave everything to government. So it's just being able to identify this in companies or organizations and then submit a proposal or even just seek intervention from them, especially for grassroots farmers.
Thank you so very much to you, Taiwo, and Mr. Nwabo, for engaging with us today. I would say that I had no idea. Of course, basic agriculture I did, but you've given rich insight into crop production, and you also have given rich insight into antimicrobial resistance. And I would say that you put it forward so simply that you made something that seems so complex, so easy to understand. So I would say thank you so much for sharing with us, and I'm sure that our students will be looking forward to the courses that you've designed at Osiri University. And I also say thank you to my co-host, Paul Easterling, for sticking with me, and also to everyone who has attended the Global Dialogue today. Thank you so very much for being with us, and we would see you same time next Saturday. Have a fantastic day ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.